In this course on social welfare and legislation, we are now going to look at the welfare schemes of the government for women. The participation of both men and women is necessary for the economic development of a nation. Unfortunately, in a country like India, which possesses immense growth potential, the sex ratio has become unfavorable towards women. In spite of their significant contribution to the society and economy, in their role as mothers and active members of the workforce respectively, the women folk face discrimination among family members and in the public. They are expected to fulfill diverse responsibilities, but are often labeled weak and incompetent as compared to men. While the inhumane practice of infanticide persists, girl children are burdened with family responsibilities at an early age, and many girl children also face exploitation at the hands of their family and members of the public. The imposition of burden interferes with the education and personality development of the girl child, and lack of awareness leads to her further exploitation by society. In the light of this grim scenario in India, it would be relevant to examine the social welfare measures undertaken by the government to alleviate the condition of women and girl children. Major initiatives launched by the government to enforce the equal participation of women in the society, economy, and polity will be analyzed. Their underlying policies and need for enforcement of such schemes will also be assessed. Let us start with government schemes for uplifting the social and economic conditions of women. At the outset, it is necessary to examine the National Policy for Empowerment of Women 2001, which has been founded on the principle of gender equality. Various international conventions which seek to ensure equality and enforcement of rights of women have been ratified by India. Significant among them is the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination against Women, also called CEDAW, in 1993. The Indian Constitution and several other statutes enacted in India seek to recognize and enforce the equal legal, social, political, and economic status of women. However, these goals and ideals enshrined in the enactments are far from realization. Recognizing this, the government adopted the National Policy for the Empowerment of Women 2001, which seeks to ensure the advancement, development, and empowerment of women. The main objects of the policy include introducing positive economic and social measures to enable women to realize their potential, equal access and encouraging the participation of women, taking measures to eradicate all types of discrimination against women, and creating and sustaining long-term partnerships with organizations involved in working with women. Under social empowerment, the policy envisages equal access of education for all women and children, adopting a holistic approach to the health and nutrition related needs of women, maternity health care, and implementing measures to ensure the stabilization of population. It is also envisaged that participation of women in determining housing policies as well as conservation and development related policies and programs for the environment will be enforced. Adopting of constructive measures for ending all forms of violence against women, including physical, emotional, and sexual, is also envisaged under this policy. Now, we look at the Mahila Samakhya program. The Mahila Samakhya program, 1986, was initiated to pursue the goals of the new education policy and promote the objectives of education and empowerment of social and economically backward women in rural India. It was envisaged by the government that concerted efforts should be taken to provide for educational opportunities to enable the empowerment of women. Gender discrimination against women had affected the access and availability of education for women and girl children. The Mahila Samakhya program is closely associated with education schemes including the DPEP and the Sarv Shiksha Abhiyan, aimed at universalization of education and promoting the access to education. It consists of Mahila Sanghs which play a participative role in community education and management of schools. The Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan program also funds the Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalayas, which are the formal girls' residential schools for promoting education for economically and socially backward girl children. We now look at schemes relating to maternity. The Indira Gandhi Matritva Sahyog Yojana is a scheme which seeks to help women in issues relating to maternity. Indian women who belong to socially and economically backward classes often continue to work up to their pregnancies and resume work soon after their childbirth. This has a severe impact on the ability of their bodies to recover and their ability to breastfeed their newborn child. This impacts the health of the mother and also deprives the newborn of the necessary nutritional requirements. In light of this situation, there is a need to introduce social measures for ensuring maternity benefit. Furthermore, young children and adolescent girls are often at a greater danger of suffering from undernutrition, low immunity levels, developing diseases, and development deficits. In accordance with statistics relating to maternal undernutrition, more than 1/3 of the women have a low body mass index. A majority of women, nearly 58%, get married before the legal age of 18 years, and a majority of these women give birth before the age of 20 years. To provide effective measures to combat this situation, the Indira Gandhi Matritva Sahyog Yojana was introduced. The scheme envisages providing of cash directly to the women during their pregnancy and lactation period, and it seeks to fulfill the short-term object of provision of income and the long-term objectives of affecting the behavior and attitude. The main objects of the scheme include the promotion of practices, care and services utilization, encouraging women to follow the IYCF practices including early breastfeeding, and providing cash and other incentives to encourage healthy practices among pregnant mothers. After looking at this scheme, the next scheme directed at the benefit of women is the Swayam Siddha scheme. The Swayam Siddha scheme of 2001 is directed towards the empowerment of women. The self-help groups program launched has emphasized on ensuring that the benefit of all the schemes and services are integrated and holistic. A total of 1,300 self-help groups have been set up under the purview of this scheme. A majority of the women engaged in these groups are involved in preservation of food, tie and dye, tailoring, beauticians, and running of petty shops. The next scheme we are looking at is the Ujjwala scheme. These schemes relate to prevention of trafficking and rehabilitation of victims of trafficking. The problem of cross-border trafficking of women and children in India is widely prevalent, and India is the source, destination, and transit point for trafficking groups. Trafficking of persons has been condemned by the international community, and India has adopted measures through the Immoral Trafficking Prevention Act to penalize the crime of human trafficking. However, apart from legislative measures, it is recommended that a multi-sectoral approach be adopted which targets the vulnerable sections of society and population and facilitates the rescue and rehabilitation of rescued victims. In order to address this need, the government has adopted the comprehensive scheme for the prevention of trafficking, rescue, rehabilitation, and reintegration of victims of trafficking, Ujjwala. This scheme adopts a multi-sectoral approach and primarily targets those vulnerable areas and groups of society who would be most vulnerable to trafficking. Various kinds of lures are used to put women into through the trafficking channels. It is very hard for women who have once gotten into this system to get out of it, and even if they are salvaged from it, it is hard for them to reintegrate with society. Therefore, this is a scheme which needs to be affected as expeditiously as possible. The next scheme we are looking at is the Support to Training and Employment Program for Women. The OECD has recognized that economic empowerment of women is the key to ensuring sustainable development, adopting a pro-poor approach, and achieving Millennium Development Goals outlined by United Nations. There is a need to ensure equitable access to resources and services in society, including land, water, and technology. Along with being controlled by social hurdles, women are faced with economic barriers. It would be important to create measures for improving employability of women and strengthen their economic rights. Economically backward women undertake all types of menial work, including domestic work, work in factories, restaurants, and shops. However, there are insufficient legislative measures to ensure that the interest of these women is adequately protected. The government has introduced the Support to Training and Employment Program, also called STEP, for women, for mobilization of women into small-sized groups and making available facilities such as access to credit. Women are made to undergo selected training programs to generate employment and income generation activities for themselves in the areas of dairying, animal husbandry, fisheries, sericulture, social forestry, and wasteland development. Support services are also included to ensure improvement of skills. The STEP program is primarily targeted towards alleviating the condition of daily workers, women engaged as migrant workers, tribal, and other dispossessed groups. Now we will look at the financial assistance to victims of rape. This scheme is a scheme for restorative justice. The right to life has been enshrined in Article 21 of the Constitution. The right to life and right to live with dignity has been included as India's international obligation under various instruments, including the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the Convention on Elimination of All Forms of Discrimination Against Women, also called the CEDAW. The crime of rape is one of the most heinous crimes committed against women. Rape impacts the bodily integrity of the woman along with affecting her capacity to develop personal and social relationships. The victim undergoes both mental as well as psychological trauma. Along with providing a harsh penalty for the perpetrator of the crime of rape, it would also be necessary to restore the position of dignity to the woman who has been wronged. Unlike other crimes where the hurt caused is physical, the woman victim undergoes psychological trauma post the commission of crime, and her reintegration into society is very important. This is in accordance with the principle of restorative justice. It is advocated that along with providing financial and material compensation, special counseling and legal aid, if necessary, should be organized for the woman victim. Thus, a scheme for providing restorative justice to rape victims has been formulated. This scheme seeks to ensure rehabilitation of the rape victim through financial assistance as well as provide for counseling and support to enable her to cope with the trauma suffered by her. It was after wide-ranging discussions with non-governmental organizations, lawyers, as well as social activists that the draft scheme was prepared. It was discussed that a comprehensive scheme which enabled the complete rehabilitation and restoration of the rape victim was necessary, and in lieu of the same, this scheme was adopted. It does not, however, in any way affect the legal right of the woman from approaching the court under section 357 to applying under section 357A of the CRPC, which is the Criminal Procedure Code, for adequate relief. We now look at a study of rural women in agricultural cooperatives. Women-only cooperatives, including cooperative banks, fruits and vegetable vendors, and consumer stores, have been successful thus far in providing for an entire range of services to the villages. Therefore, to ensure the continued participation of women in the decision-making process, the state has sought to make a 33% representation of women in all local self-governing bodies, including the cooperatives. In many states, the board of directors have a large presence of women. It is pertinent to note that the maximum number of women in the cooperatives in the region come from both credit as well as consumer-based sectors. The role and relationship between the women and their cooperatives should be reflected upon. A cooperative, in the capacity of a social development agency, should take measures for advocating gender equality. Women should be actively involved and also play a crucial role in developmental work. Being associated with the cooperative can enable a woman to enhance her social as well as economic status. Finally, these cooperatives should adopt constructive measures to promote women empowerment and formulate strategies which would effectively address the issues of gender discrimination. To conclude this lecture, according to reported statistics, while women work two-thirds of the world's working hours, they earn only 10% of the world's income and own less than 1% of the world's property. Women constitute almost two-thirds of the illiterate population of adults in the world, and girl children comprise almost 60% of those who are not attending schools. There is discrimination against the girl in several parts of India, against the education of the girl child. In the course of this lecture, the schemes sought to be implemented by the government were analyzed with a special focus on the relevance of the policy to the Indian context. It would be correct to state that while India has adopted a comprehensive legislative and policy-based framework to ensure the welfare of women, the successful implementation can be achieved through a closer alignment of the administrative setup with civil society and greater engagement with women and girl children to increase their participation within the society, economy, and polity.